Police never lie. What motivations do police officers have to lie? I have police officers in my family, so I know how honest police officers are. Police are always right. Imagine you're a defendant on trial in a criminal case, and one of the potential jurors expresses such beliefs. Now, imagine that your case is going to turn on the word of an eyewitness versus a police officer's. Surely someone who holds such beliefs can't be allowed to decide your fate, can they? I mean, you'd think that juror would be removed immediately. In many courtrooms, they aren't. In fact, after admitting this bias, the judge or lawyers may actually try to keep them on the jury. If the wrong juror stays on the panel, it can affect a murder trial, a divorce, a child custody case, or even a lawsuit involving millions of dollars. During jury selection, also known as voir dire, the attorneys are trying to determine which potential jurors have a bias or prejudice that might affect their ability to be fair and impartial. Bias is pretty wide-ranging and could be a preference for mothers to get custody of small children, a belief that men can't be victims of domestic violence, or as in our example, a belief that police officers are never wrong. There's nothing wrong with a juror being biased in favor of police officers, so long as the credibility of a police officer isn't at issue. For example, if a juror on a breach of contract case is biased in favor of police, then that really doesn't matter. The attorneys ask the potential jurors questions during voir dire to try and uncover these biases. So in your case, if a juror expressed such biases in favor of police, then they obviously have to be removed, right? Juror rehabilitation is one of the most controversial portions of jury selection. Some trial lawyers hate rehabilitation because they believe it allows lawyers to talk jurors out of their honest answers. Even though that juror just clearly expressed a bias in favor of police officers, that doesn't mean that they're automatically going to be removed. It means that the attorneys, and surprisingly even the judge, will now try to rehabilitate the juror by asking some additional questions. The way I've seen this happen is for the judge or other attorney to speak with the juror outside the presence of the other jurors. The judge calls them up to the bench, and then the questions start. The prosecutor might ask, even though you said that you thought police officers are honest, you wouldn't automatically believe a police officer over someone else's testimony just because they're a police officer, would you? Or the judge might ask, if I told you that the law requires you to consider all of the evidence and then weigh it, you aren't going to give the officer's testimony greater weight simply because he's a police officer, are you? They poke and prod with these types of questions until they can rehabilitate the juror into saying that they believe they can be fair and impartial and apply the law. Once the juror says that, then ta-da! You have a rehabilitated juror who is deemed fit to serve. So, what can you do to make sure that the potential juror is rehab-proof? So, in our example, your potential juror expressed a pretty clear bias. But, as you can tell from the judges' and prosecutors' pressure tactics, it wouldn't take much to rehabilitate them. However, with a series of questions that you or your attorney asks, you can make rehabilitation much more difficult. The key is commitment. You need them to commit to their bias. They need to own it. They need to admit that this was more than just a misstatement. You should start by asking questions like, you indicated that you don't believe police officers ever lie, is that correct? That's a belief you hold pretty strongly. That's based on your personal experiences and values. See how we get the juror to commit? Then you ask some follow-up questions. Would that belief be something you would bring with you into the jury room? That belief would influence how you evaluate evidence. That belief would make it harder for the defendant to start on equal footing if the defendant and the officer gave conflicting testimony, wouldn't it? Now that they've committed to and owned their bias, you need to make sure that the judge or prosecutor can't take it away. So you ask, even knowing the law says that you're not supposed to start one side ahead of the other, it would still be difficult for you to put your beliefs aside, right? You would have difficulty believing a defendant's testimony over a police officer's testimony, wouldn't you? Is it fair to say that your personal beliefs would sometimes compete with the judge's instructions? Now, the final nail in the coffin. So, regardless of the instructions that you're given, those beliefs and values would remain with you throughout trial and during deliberations, right? Just like that, you can ensure that the judge or prosecutor can't rehabilitate the juror with a simple, you're a law-abiding citizen who will follow the law, right? It probably goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. The reason the prosecutor wants to rehabilitate a juror who expresses such a bias is because it helps them to make their case. I mean, can you really blame them? If you were injured and in a car wreck case, wouldn't you do everything you could to keep a juror who said that insurance companies will cheat customers to avoid having to pay claims? The reason you really have to chase down the bias is to confirm that it is an improper bias that would affect their ability to deliberate. It is impossible to eliminate all bias, but the goal is to remove jurors who will not be able to be fair and impartial because of their bias. If you've enjoyed learning about juror rehabilitation, then select the like button so YouTube will show this video to more people like you. And if you subscribe, you'll get to see our new videos that we publish every Thursday by noon. Until then, I think you'll enjoy this video of ours on how jury selection actually works. I'll see you in the next video.